the people. So the guy that booked Roy, the promoter, paid him in cash, and he gave him two big grocery sacks full of money.
What if I told you that the biggest hit of 1968 wasn't recorded by the Beatles, Elvis Presley, or the Rolling Stones? Instead, it came from a quiet singer from Alabama, whose name has largely faded from public memory. For 5 straight weeks, Bobby Goldsboro's emotional ballad Honey sat at the top of the Billboard Hot 100. It became one of the year's biggest selling singles, reached #1 in several countries, and turned Goldsboro into one of the most recognizable voices in America. At the height of his career, he toured with Roy Orbison, shared stages with the Rolling Stones, crossed paths with the Beatles during Beatlemania, and appeared regularly on national television. His future seemed brighter than ever, but decades later, his reputation would be overshadowed by controversy. Allegations surrounding his personal life would dramatically alter how many people viewed his legacy, leaving fans divided over whether he should be remembered for his music or the scandal that followed him. Before any of that happened, however, Bobby Goldsboro was simply a young boy with a dream that had nothing to do with music. A small-town beginning. Robert Charles Goldsboro was born on January 18, 1941, in Marianna, Florida. Not long after his birth, his family moved to Dothan, Alabama, where he spent most of his childhood. His parents owned a small flower shop, and music wasn't a major part of family life. Growing up, Bobby's greatest passion wasn't singing, it was baseball. Like many young boys, he dreamed of becoming a professional athlete. He practiced constantly and believed the sport could become his future. But as he grew older, he realized his smaller stature would make reaching the major leagues extremely difficult. That realization changed the course of his life. At the age of 12, Bobby borrowed a ukulele and began teaching himself to play by ear. Before long, he switched to guitar and discovered he enjoyed singing just as much as playing. Music quickly replaced baseball as his biggest passion. During high school, he joined a local band called Spider and the Webs. The group played wherever they could: school dances, community events, private parties, and small venues throughout Alabama. The pay was modest, but every performance helped Bobby become a more confident musician. After graduating in 1959, he enrolled at Auburn University to study business administration. It seemed like the practical path toward a stable future. Still, music refused to let go. Everything changed one evening when Roy Orbison came to town on tour. Bobby's band was chosen to open the show, and their performance caught Orbison's attention. Impressed by what he heard, Orbison offered Bobby and his band the opportunity to become his touring backup group. There were no lengthy auditions or complicated negotiations, just one unexpected offer that would completely change Bobby Goldsboro's life. Faced with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Bobby made his decision without hesitation. He left college behind and stepped into the professional music world, beginning a journey that would eventually make him one of the biggest recording artists of the 1960s. Leaving college behind was a huge gamble, but it quickly proved to be the right decision. For the next 3 years, Bobby Goldsboro traveled across the United States, Europe, and Australia as a member of Roy Orbison's touring band. These weren't small club performances, they were major concerts alongside one of the biggest stars of the era. Night after night, Bobby watched Orbison command thousands of fans with remarkable control and confidence. Every performance became a lesson in showmanship. He learned how to connect emotionally with an audience, build anticipation during a song, and handle the demanding lifestyle that came with constant touring. The experience became an education no classroom could have provided. Without realizing it, Bobby was also witnessing one of the greatest revolutions in popular music, crossing paths with the Beatles. In 1963, Roy Orbison joined a tour featuring a young British group that was beginning to attract extraordinary attention: the Beatles. Long before they became worldwide legends, Bobby found himself sharing hotels, buses, and backstage areas with the 4 musicians from Liverpool. Years later, he recalled an amusing story involving John Lennon. According to Bobby, Lennon had trouble seeing clearly during performances, so he suggested trying contact lenses. It sounded like a practical solution until one unexpected problem appeared. Beatles fans had developed the unusual habit of throwing jelly beans onto the stage during concerts. Wearing the early contact lenses of the 1960s, while candy flew toward the performers' faces, turned out to be anything but comfortable. Lennon quickly abandoned the idea. It's a funny memory, but it also highlights how closely Bobby witnessed some of the defining moments in rock history. He wasn't simply watching famous musicians from the audience. He was living alongside them while modern popular music was changing forever. Beginning a solo career. Although he enjoyed touring with Roy Orbison, Bobby wanted to build a career under his own name. In late 1962, he released his first solo single, Molly. While it earned only modest success, the song demonstrated that listeners were willing to give the young singer a chance outside Orbison's shadow. His real breakthrough arrived 2 years later. In 1964, Bobby released See the Funny Little Clown. The emotional ballad immediately connected with audiences and climbed into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. Selling more than 1 million copies, the record transformed Bobby from a respected touring musician into a genuine recording star. The timing couldn't have been better. Success. During the British invasion. The mid-1960s were one of the most competitive periods in music history. British bands were dominating radio stations across America. Every record company was searching for its next breakout artist, and audiences' tastes were changing almost overnight. Despite the fierce competition, Bobby carved out a unique place for himself. His music blended elements of pop, country, and soft rock, giving him an identity that appealed to both younger listeners and older audiences. While many artists embraced louder, more rebellious styles, Bobby built his reputation on heartfelt storytelling and clean-cut charm. That image helped open remarkable doors. During the Rolling Stones' first American tour, Bobby performed as one of the opening acts. It was a striking contrast. An Alabama singer known for gentle ballads sharing stages with one of the most exciting rock bands in the world. Another fascinating story from that period involves Keith Richards. According to Richards, Bobby once showed him a guitar chord he hadn't previously used. It's a little-known piece of rock history that illustrates just how respected Bobby was among fellow musicians. A string of hit records. Following his breakthrough, Bobby's momentum continued to grow. Songs such as Little Things, Voodoo Woman, and It's Too Late all became successful releases, helping him establish an impressive streak on the Billboard charts. By the late 1960s, he had placed nearly 30 consecutive singles on the charts, an achievement that few recording artists have ever matched. Yet despite his remarkable consistency, Bobby was still searching for one defining song, the kind of record that would forever connect his name with music history. That opportunity arrived in 1968, when songwriter Bobby Russell introduced him to a simple but emotionally powerful ballad called Honey. Neither of them could have imagined that the song would completely transform Bobby Goldsboro's career. By the late 1960s, Bobby Goldsboro had built an impressive career. He was a familiar face on the charts, respected by fellow musicians, and steadily growing his fan base. But despite a string of successful records, he still hadn't found the one song that would define his legacy. That changed in 1968. Songwriter Bobby Russell introduced a ballad titled Honey. At first glance, it didn't seem like an obvious blockbuster. Its lyrics were deeply sentimental, telling the story of a man remembering his late wife through the small moments they had shared together. Some people even felt the song was too emotional to become a mainstream hit. Bobby, however, saw something special in it. Rather than trying to make the song more dramatic or theatrical, he performed it with honesty and restraint. That sincerity became its greatest strength. A remarkably fast recording. The recording session for Honey was surprisingly simple. While on tour, Bobby and his team recorded the song during a stop in Minneapolis. According to Bobby, the first complete performance captured exactly the emotion they were looking for. They experimented with recording it again, but every new version lacked the feeling of that original take. In the end, they chose the very first recording. It turned out to be the right decision, a worldwide sensation. When Honey was released, its success exceeded every expectation. The song climbed to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, where it remained for 5 consecutive weeks. It also reached the top of the country charts and became a favorite on adult contemporary radio. Its popularity wasn't limited to the United States. Around the world, millions of copies were sold, making it one of the year's biggest international hits. At a time when legendary artists were releasing some of the most celebrated music of their careers, Bobby Goldsboro managed to stand above them on the sales charts. For one extraordinary moment, he was one of the biggest names in the music industry. Life at the top. The success of Honey transformed Bobby's career almost overnight. Television producers rushed to invite him onto their programs. His calm personality and approachable style made him a welcome guest in family living rooms across America. Unlike many performers of the era, Bobby didn't build his image around rebellion or controversy. Instead, audiences appreciated his warmth, sincerity, and emotional storytelling. That wholesome reputation became one of his greatest strengths, expanding beyond music. As the years went on, Bobby looked beyond recording albums. He became a frequent television personality and eventually hosted his own syndicated variety program, introducing himself to an even wider audience. At the same time, he showed a strong interest in the business side of the music industry. In 1971, he founded House of Gold Music, a music publishing company based in Nashville. Over time, the business grew into a valuable catalog of publishing rights connected to numerous successful songs. The move demonstrated that Bobby wasn't thinking only about his next hit record. He was building a long-term career behind the scenes as well. Another meaningful hit. Although Honey remained his signature song, Bobby continued recording music that resonated with listeners. One of his most memorable later releases was Watching Scotty Grow. Its heartfelt lyrics about watching a child grow up struck a chord with parents and families across America. The song reinforced the public image Bobby had carefully developed over the years, a performer whose music focused on love, family, and everyday life rather than shock value or rebellion. An extraordinary career peak. By the middle of the 1970s, Bobby Goldsboro had achieved accomplishments that many artists only dream about. He had sold tens of millions of records worldwide, earned multiple Grammy nominations, performed in prestigious venues, toured internationally, and established himself as both an entertainer and a successful businessman. From the outside, everything appeared to be going exactly as planned. But the music industry was changing rapidly. New styles were beginning to dominate the charts, younger audiences were looking for different sounds, and Bobby's greatest challenge was still ahead. The next chapter of his career would prove that reaching the top is often much easier than staying there. When the music industry changed, the enormous success of Honey made Bobby Goldsboro one of the most recognizable singers in America. But in the music business, success can be surprisingly difficult to maintain. As the 1970s progressed, popular music began to evolve at a rapid pace. Rock became louder and more experimental, disco exploded in popularity, and younger audiences started embracing entirely new styles. The sentimental ballads that had made Bobby a household name no longer dominated the charts. For an artist so closely identified with one unforgettable hit, keeping that momentum alive became an increasingly difficult challenge. Living in the shadow of a classic, after the incredible success of Honey, every new release faced the same problem. Fans, critics, and radio stations constantly compared each song to the record that had defined his career. While Bobby continued releasing quality music, few of his later singles could match the extraordinary impact of his signature hit. He still enjoyed moments of success. Songs like Watching Scotty Grow earned strong chart positions and remained favorites among his audience. Other recordings also found loyal listeners, particularly among fans who appreciated his emotional storytelling. Even so, the level of success he had experienced in 1968 became increasingly difficult to repeat. A changing audience. By the middle of the decade, the charts looked very different. Disco acts filled dance floors, hard rock bands dominated arenas, and younger performers introduced fresh sounds that captured the attention of a new generation. Compared with these changing trends, Bobby's gentle style began to seem old-fashioned to many younger listeners. Although his longtime fans remained loyal, attracting a broader audience became much more challenging. This shift wasn't unique to Bobby. Many artists who had enjoyed enormous success during the 1960s struggled to adapt as musical tastes changed. The entertainment industry can be unforgiving. An artist who defines one era may find themselves fighting to remain relevant in the next. Success beyond the charts. Even as his chart performance slowed, Bobby continued working steadily. He remained active as a performer, appeared on television, and expanded his business interests through music publishing. His experience in the industry gave him opportunities that extended far beyond recording new albums. Unlike many musicians whose careers ended when their hit records disappeared, Bobby had built a strong foundation behind the scenes. Still, public attention gradually shifted toward newer artists, and his presence in mainstream pop culture became less visible with each passing year. A different challenge ahead for Bobby Goldsboro. Changing musical trends were only part of the story. The decline in record sales was disappointing, but it wasn't the event that would have the greatest impact on his life or his reputation. In the early 1980s, deeply personal issues began attracting public attention. What started as a private family matter soon became national news, bringing intense media coverage and controversy. The events that followed would overshadow decades of musical success and permanently change how many people viewed Bobby Goldsboro's career. That chapter remains the most controversial part of his life, and one that continues to generate debate even today. A private life becomes public. By the early 1980s, Bobby Goldsboro was no longer dominating the music charts, but he remained well known for his recordings, television appearances, and family-friendly public image. For years, he had been viewed as one of the entertainment industry's most wholesome personalities. His songs celebrated love, family, and everyday life, and that reputation had become a major part of his success. In 1982, however, his personal life took an unexpected turn. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, Bobby and his wife, Mary Alice Watson, divorced. What might have remained a private family matter soon developed into a bitter legal dispute that attracted widespread media attention. Serious allegations. During the legal proceedings, Bobby's eldest daughter made serious allegations against him under oath, claiming that he had sexually abused her and one of her childhood friends years earlier. The accusations shocked many people, because Bobby's public image had always been built around trust, kindness, and family values. The allegations received significant attention from newspapers and television outlets across the country. Reports from that period also discussed additional claims that emerged during the court proceedings, further increasing public scrutiny. Bobby's response. From the beginning, Bobby Goldsboro firmly denied the allegations. He publicly stated that the accusations were false, and described the experience as one of the most painful periods of his life. He maintained his innocence, and repeatedly rejected the claims made against him. It's important to note that although the allegations became highly publicized during the divorce proceedings, Bobby Goldsboro was never criminally charged or convicted in connection with those accusations. Even so, the controversy had a profound effect on his public reputation. The court of public opinion. Whether or not legal action follows, serious allegations can dramatically change how the public views a celebrity. For Bobby, the consequences were immediate. Television appearances became far less common. Major media attention shifted away from celebrating his music, and instead focused on the controversy surrounding his personal life. Opportunities that had once come easily began to disappear. His image as a trusted family entertainer had been deeply damaged. Unlike artists whose careers survived scandals involving substance abuse or reckless behavior, Bobby faced allegations that directly conflicted with the values his career had always represented. That contrast made rebuilding public trust especially difficult. A career overshadowed. For many fans, Bobby Goldsboro would always be remembered as the voice behind Honey and other timeless songs. For others, the controversy became impossible to separate from his legacy. As the years passed, discussions about his career often focused less on his musical achievements and more on the allegations that had surfaced during his divorce. It was a dramatic change for a performer who had once sold millions of records, hosted his own television show, and stood among the biggest names in popular music. Although the scandal largely removed him from the spotlight, it did not mark the end of his creative life. Instead of trying to reclaim his place on the pop charts, Bobby chose a very different path, one that would allow him to continue creating away from the constant attention of the entertainment industry. That unexpected second chapter would reveal another side of his talent, proving that his creativity extended far beyond singing alone. Starting over. Following the public controversy of the early 1980s, Bobby Goldsboro stepped away from the spotlight that had once followed him everywhere. Rather than chasing another chart-topping hit, he chose a quieter path, focusing on creative projects away from the world of mainstream pop music. In 1985, he married Diane Roberts and began rebuilding his life with far less public attention than he had experienced during the peak of his career. While many assumed his creative journey had ended, Bobby was preparing for an entirely new chapter, a new direction. Instead of returning to the recording industry, he turned his attention to children's entertainment. In 1991, he created the animated television special Easter Egg Morning, writing the story, composing the music, arranging the songs, and even providing voices for several characters. The special aired on the Disney Channel and became a recurring holiday favorite for years. It was a surprising career move that demonstrated his versatility as a writer, composer, and producer. But he didn't stop there. Building an animated series a few years later, Bobby launched an ambitious children's television series titled The Swamp Critters of Lost Lagoon. The show aired on PBS and the Learning Channel and ran for dozens of episodes. What made the project remarkable was the number of responsibilities Bobby handled himself. He wrote every script, composed the music, arranged the songs, voiced every character, and played the instruments heard throughout the series. For most productions, those jobs would normally be divided among dozens of people. Bobby managed nearly all of them himself. It was one of the most ambitious creative projects of his career, even though it attracted far less public attention than his music had decades earlier. Discovering another passion during the 2000s, Bobby explored yet another creative outlet, painting. He began producing detailed wildlife and landscape artwork inspired by nature. What started as a personal hobby soon developed into a successful artistic career. His paintings were displayed in galleries across several states, and collectors began purchasing his work. Once again, Bobby had reinvented himself. Throughout his life, he had worn many different titles: singer, songwriter, television host, music publisher, animator, voice actor, composer, and now painter. Few entertainers successfully transition between so many different careers. A complicated legacy. Even with these later accomplishments, discussions about Bobby Goldsboro almost always return to the same difficult question: how should he be remembered? To many music fans, he remains the voice behind Honey, one of the defining songs of the late 1960s. His recordings continue to be played decades after their release, introducing new generations to the music that once made him an international star. Others believe the controversy surrounding his personal life permanently changed the way his career should be viewed. Because the allegations became such a significant part of his public story, opinions about his legacy remain divided. Supporters point out that he consistently denied the accusations and was never criminally convicted. Critics argue that the allegations themselves cannot simply be ignored. The debate continues to this day. The final chapter today. Bobby Goldsboro lives a much quieter life in Florida, far from the constant attention that once surrounded him. He rarely appears in the media and has largely stepped away from public life. Looking back, his journey is one of the most unusual in popular music. A young man who once dreamed of becoming a baseball player instead toured with Roy Orbison, shared the stage with the Rolling Stones, crossed paths with the Beatles, recorded one of the biggest songs of the 1960s, built a successful publishing company, created children's television programs, and later became an accomplished painter. Very few artists experience even one career as remarkable as that. Bobby Goldsboro lived several. His story is one of extraordinary success, dramatic reinvention, and lasting controversy. It reminds us that fame can be both rewarding and fragile, and that a person's legacy is often shaped by far more than their greatest achievements. For one unforgettable moment in 1968, Bobby Goldsboro stood at the very top of the music world. Everything that followed would ensure that his name would be remembered, not only for the songs he recorded, but also for the complex story behind the man who sang them.